Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Todd Bishop, and I serve as the Wildlife Bureau Chief for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. You're attending local meetings being held across the state this week to recap the recently completed hunting and trapping season and discuss any proposed changes to hunting regulations for next year. We have a few short recorded presentations that provide statewide summaries of wildlife population status and trends, as well as some harvest estimates from last season. In the room with you this evening are local wildlife biologists and conservation officers that manage wildlife habitats, conduct population surveys, and enforce hunting regulations in your area. Together, all of you in this room participate in the annual management of wildlife populations, which is why these local meetings are so valuable. The rest of this meeting is for you to ask questions, provide comments, and participate in a group discussion regarding hunting regulations and wildlife populations. Please share your observations and experiences, both good and bad, from last hunting season. We have at least one staff member taking notes at your meeting to record your comments and summarize the discussion. If you have more specific or lengthy comments that you wish to submit after the meeting, please do so. Comments received via email will be weighted equally to the comments made during the meeting. These meetings coincide with the legislative session, and there's often proposed legislation regarding hunting regulations at the time of these meetings. We understand that this might come up during your discussions. We want to be clear that we do not carry those comments forward to lawmakers, and we do want to remind you to work with your legislators directly on any input you have regarding proposed legislation. Also, if you know of anyone who's unable to attend one of these meetings, the recorded presentations will be posted on the website beginning next week. We'll continue to accept comments via email, and the appropriate address is included in the recorded presentations. Many of you have regularly attended these meetings over the years, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your continued participation. Not just at this meeting, but throughout the year as you work with local staff on wildlife habitat projects, assist in wildlife disease surveillance programs, report your deer and turkey harvest, and participate in wildlife and hunter surveys. For those of you that are attending for the first time or are new to hunting, welcome. Please take this opportunity to introduce yourself to the staff present in the room. Know that we depend on your engagement as hunters and conservationists throughout the year to accomplish our ultimate goals of long-term conservation of the wildlife resource and providing quality hunting opportunities now and for future generations. Again, thank you for your participation and have a great meeting.
I'm Jim Coffey, Forest Wildlife Biologist for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, located out of our Sheraton Research Station. My primary species of focus are ruffed grouse, squirrels, and wild turkeys. We're going to start off tonight talking about our squirrel populations. Squirrels are a very underutilized resource in the state of Iowa. Our traditional numbers show that we used to harvest over 1 million squirrels, and the average squirrel hunter today is only harvesting 1 squirrel per trip. That is generally not an indication of the number of squirrels in the landscape, but more the number of people participating in this sport. I highly recommend that if you're a new hunter or a young hunter, even an old hunter, get out there and chase Iowa squirrels. I also deal with wild turkeys, which is a very popular sport in the state of Iowa. We have 2 seasons, a spring season and a fall season. We've just come off a record-breaking harvest year for 2024. Our increase in harvest was up over 34% across the state. We had about a 5% increase in the number of hunters out there pursuing, which is generally an indication of people were seeing a lot of turkeys and wanted to get out and chase them. Our fall season is very underutilized. We issue about 7,000 licenses across the state with an average harvest of about 500 to 700 birds per year. It's something that could be utilized more, but it is one of our seasons that does not get used as much as it should. Those hunters that are out there in the fall are harvesting birds that are generally the young of the year, but remember about half of those are male birds, and so therefore this does not really have a population level impact that some people think it does. We have 2 surveys in the state of Iowa that help us understand our turkey populations. One's our fall bow hunter survey, and one is our summer turkey survey. This is the 9 agricultural regions that we break the state up into to look at production across the state. 8 of our 9 regions were down this year from our 5-year average, but you have to remember we've come off 3 great years of production, and so therefore our 5-year average is a little high. If you've got questions about your specific area or observations you've made, we appreciate the input that you can add to that survey. And ruffed grouse is the final species we'll talk about. Relocated to a very small area of northeast Iowa, it's a population of birds that we still associate with our early successional forests. We're looking at conducting more surveys with our spring turkey hunters, as well as doing some field work with our staff to understand the grouse population better to help us make decisions going into the future. If you've got any additional questions about forest wildlife species in Iowa, please feel free to contact me through this web address or give me a direct call at my office at Sheraton. Be glad to discuss issues with you.
Evening, hunters and trappers. My name is Vince Evelsizer, and I'd like to give you guys a short summary on the Furbearer program. So this year, the fur market remains weak, unfortunately, including the beaver prices, which are down from last year. However, otters and bobcat prices are pretty decent. The good news to remember with all of this is that nearly all Furbearer population levels in Iowa are stable or increasing. And also trapping pressure is generally low out there. The exception is that muskrats and gray fox populations are declining. Looking at this table here is annual harvest for the past 7 years. If you look at the red circles on this table, and we'll move left to right on it, the raccoon harvest was up in the 23-24 season from just 2 years ago when it was down around 34,000. So that increase, we were happy to see that. Moving to the right there, the next circle is the gray fox column. That was a 0 for the first time since 1930, so that's something we're keeping our eyes on as well. Moving to the right, the coyote column, if you look at the 2018-19 season, which is that top circle in the coyote column, it was way up around 18,000 or so when the fur market, the average pelt price for coyotes was high. This past year in 23-24, the reported coyote harvest was way down around 1,500-1,600. However, we know that like raccoons, not all coyotes maybe make it into the fur market nowadays. So as part of that, we're interested in starting up a fur harvest survey with our human dimensions person, Peter Fritzell, to really get at the true harvest versus what's being reported by raw furs purchased each year, especially for those two species, raccoons and coyotes. Thought it might be interesting to share with you guys the annual gray fox harvest in Iowa. We're fortunate to have this dating back to 1930 up until the present. The present is the year 2023-24. We'll get 24-25 here in May. But if you look at the blue line, it fluctuates up and down over time. The peaks really occurred in the early 1940s and the late 1970s with the harvest up around 2,500 to 3,000, which even at its peak is pretty low in comparison with other species like muskrats and coons, which have several 100,000 harvested annually in past years. The other thing you can also see with this graph is that the gray fox harvest fluctuates up and down with both trapper effort and pelt prices. But also in the last 25 years, that harvest has really gone down drastically, and so we're keeping an eye on that. Just wanted to give you a quick update on a couple of studies. The muskrat health study is on hold for 1 more year. We were fortunate to get our muskrats in last winter thanks to the help from trappers. However, some of the other states are trying to get their muskrats submitted to the lab this year, and this is a 13-state project, so once those muskrats from the other states get in and get analyzed, we'll be able to find out more on the results from this pilot muskrat study, and that'll help in determining whether there's more work that can be done on that front in the future. Second project I wanted to give you an update on is the gray fox project. The trapping and collaring work is going well, just slow. We only have 2 foxes collared at this time, and really points out how few foxes there are out there on the landscape. What we'd like to learn from the collaring work is what kind of habitat they're using and what is some of the cause-specific mortality and diseases. So what are they really dying from? What's causing their decline? In addition to that, we're excited to start a pilot trail cam survey in northeast Iowa that focuses on gray foxes and fishers. And from that, we hope to learn where are they and are not in northeast Iowa, presence and absence up there in that part of the state to complement the collaring work. The biggest highlight or the most exciting thing to point out here for this past year was that the revival of fur harvest education program continues to grow and become stronger, and would just really like to compliment the Iowa Trappers Association for stepping up and helping on that endeavor. They provided a lot of extra time on their behalf and help with teaching those classes on weekends, providing food and setup and that sort of thing. So that's very much appreciated. If folks are interested in learning more about that, they can contact the Iowa Trappers Association or the Iowa DNR. We also thank the Iowa DNR's law enforcement and hunter ed program on that front too. Have a good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Bogenschutz, and I'm the Upland Game Biologist for the Wildlife Bureau. I'm stationed out of the Boone Research Station. And I'm going to give you an overview of our upland game populations over the past year in the state of Iowa. I'm going to start off with a little summary. We had a pretty normal winter, but we did have a blizzard in January that may have impacted some of our hen survival, particularly pheasants and quail. Lasted about 3 weeks. But probably more importantly was the rainfall we saw statewide. We had almost 12 inches of rain this spring during the peak of nesting, and normal is about 8. So usually when it's wet like that, we see a decline in our production. And so if you look at our roadside counts here, for 2024, you can see that we did see a decline in pheasant, quail, and partridge numbers from what we saw in 2023 in our roadside count. So not unexpected, given the amount of moisture that we saw during the nesting season. Cottontails were up a little bit. They generally do better when we do have that lush green, more wetter spring, so to speak, than we do with our upland birds. But that being said, we still had pretty good pheasant numbers across much of the northern half of the state of Iowa. Moving on to harvest, I can't share with you harvest for this past fall 2024 because we don't do the surveys until March. So what I'm going to share with you is our harvest from the 2023 season, and it was a heck of a year. You can see from the table there that we harvested over 500,000 roosters in the state of Iowa in 2023, almost 600,000, which was our best pheasant harvest and actually our best hunter numbers in the last 15 years. Second highest in the country, only South Dakota shot more pheasants than Iowa. So it was a heck of a year. You can see from the pictures there that even this fall, 2024, we did have some good reports to our Facebook page. Even though our numbers are down a little bit, we still have some pretty decent hunting across the northern part of the state. But that being said, my prediction for our harvest in 2024 is probably going to be down a little bit based on that roadside count information that I just shared with you. We're making some changes to how we estimate our pheasant and small game harvest. Normally we do a small game survey after the seasons. We estimate this by sending out postcards to a random sample of our hunters after the season. Unfortunately, because deer and turkey hunters, waterfowl hunters, and small game hunters all have to buy the hunting license, we don't know which one of you hunted small game. So because we've had more deer and turkey hunters over the last number of years and some changes with the legislature on who has to buy hunting licenses, we wanted to try to kind of improve our estimates. So when you buy your 2025 hunting license through one of our electronic vendors, you're going to see these 3 questions pop up that ask if you hunted small game this past year. Just simple yes or no questions. And the reason we're asking those is to hopefully get a better sample. So when I send out our survey in 2025, it'll go to people who actually hunted small game rather than people that deer or turkey hunted and never hunted small game. So wait for us to get some better estimates. I'm going to move on to our habitat trends and how that relates to the Farm Bill. You can see at the table on the screen there that over the last 30 years we've seen pretty significant decline in the habitats that we have for pheasants and upland game in the state, primarily grasslands. In 1990, we had over 4,000 square miles of hay and small grains that pheasants could use and nest in, and we had almost another 3,000 acres of CRP for a total of 7,000 square miles statewide. You can see in 2023, we've almost cut that in half. We've lost almost 3,000 square miles of habitat in that 30-year time frame. The chart there just kind of shows you that trend through time from 1990 through today. The green line being the habitat trend, the brown line being our pheasant harvest. So Obviously, the more habitat we have, the more pheasants we can have, and of course, if we lose habitat, the less we have. So you can see CRP has become the dominant grassland habitat for us here as of 2023, so that's what makes the Farm Bill so important. We'd like to see Congress pass the Farm Bill in 2025. It's kind of been in limbo, so our landowners don't really know what's going on with the program. We'd like to see that they maintain the land eligibility. Some discussion about making land in Iowa not eligible, so that wouldn't be good for our pheasant habitat. They are talking about changing the rental rates they pay and restoring cost share that landowners get for CRP, which would both be very good changes. We've seen some decline in enrollment because of those changes made in the prior farm bills. And of course, there's talk about maybe increasing funding for the walk-in hunting program, which is part of the Farm Bill. And it's how we fund our IHAP program here in Iowa, which has been very well received by hunters and landowners. So if we saw an increase in funding there, it would mean we can open up maybe some more CRP to public hunting. And I'll wrap up with an important event in Iowa's history. This marks our 100th year of pheasant hunting in the great state of Iowa. Our first pheasant season was in 1925. So to celebrate this, the DNR and the Wildlife Bureau, we've kind of put together this web page, that icon you see on your screen, kind of celebrating the long history we have of pheasant hunting in the great state of Iowa and being one of the top pheasant harvest states in the nation. As part of that, we have that commemorative hard card. It'll probably be a collector's item. So when you buy your license this year, you do have the option to have that hard card. It's by local artist Greg Bordignon in partnership with our great partner Pheasants Forever. You can see kind of the ghost pickup in the back commemorating that first season, and kind of the pheasants in the foreground today, and the year marking the first year of our pheasant season. So if you go to the logo, you can also find a gear store that Pheasants Forever. You can buy actually hats and sweatshirts with the logo and find all the history of pheasant hunting for the last 100 years in Iowa, commemorative stories and reports, etc. So I encourage folks to check that out. That's all I have for you now. If you have comments about our upland game seasons or species, please direct them to the email on the screen. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Orrin Jones, a waterfowl biologist with the Wildlife Bureau of the Iowa DNR. I have a few updates for waterfowl hunters tonight. The first is regarding population status. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Canadian Wildlife Service conduct surveys annually, and in spring 2024 on the northern prairies, they again found lower continental breeding duck populations that are below the long-term average and significantly lower than recent all-time record highs. This is the third year in a row of these lower populations. What's driving these lower populations are environmental conditions. This is a map that shows the drought conditions that were present when the birds were initiating nesting in spring 2024. There was a large swath of unfavorable nesting conditions across much of the northern prairies. This was mitigated by abundant rainfall in May and June, which may have helped brood survival, but the timing of the precipitation was likely too late to encourage a strong nesting effort. Here in Iowa, we monitor the fall migration through a weekly waterfowl count at refuges across the state. In fall 2024, counts were within the range of the previous 10 years for 12 of the 17 weeks. However, there was a stretch of 5 weeks during mid-October to mid-November where counts were well below normal. This was likely due to very mild and stable weather conditions and perhaps those lower continental populations. Another event that waterfowl hunters should be aware of was a severe outbreak of avian influenza in December 2024. This event began with the influx of migrant ducks in mid-November and severely affected a small proportion of Canada geese and trumpeter swans, especially during December. This was very unfortunate, and it's an unprecedented new development, so many questions remain. But waterfowl hunters should be aware that they may see sick birds and may come into contact with birds that have the virus. Fortunately, the CDC considers the risk of this particular strain to humans to be low, but there are some simple common sense steps that can help limit your exposure. First, avoid contact with sick or dead birds. This is important for hunters, but also your retrievers. Second, clean your birds in a well-ventilated area. Third, Wear gloves and wash your hands frequently while cleaning your birds, and clean any potentially contaminated surfaces. Fourth, dispose of your carcasses in a way that's going to limit exposure of scavengers and pets. And then lastly, be sure to cook your meat to an appropriate temperature. For the upcoming hunting seasons, the season dates will largely be very similar with two important changes. The first is that the federal frameworks for the special September teal season will be reduced from 16 days to 9 days. As a result, we have to adjust the timing of the teal season. So the teal season will begin on the first Saturday in September instead of September 1st. The second change to be aware of is the daily bag limit for pintails will increase to 3 per day. All other daily bag limits will remain the same, and the timing of the season dates will be similar to previous years. In 2024, the Waterfowl program conducted an evaluation of the duck hunting season structure and dates to inform selection of waterfowl hunting zone boundaries and season structure for 2026 through 2030. This primarily consisted of 3 sources of information. The first of which is hunter activity and harvest from the Harvest Information Program, or HIP. What we see from the HIP data is that duck hunting activity is highest in October and November. And now each zone is a little different, with the north zone having the highest hunting activity in October and the south zone having the highest hunting activity in November. But overall, the patterns indicates the vast majority of hunting activity occurs in October and November. The second source of data we used was the Fall Migration Survey. Again, this is a weekly count in waterfowl refuges across the state. We took an average of these weekly counts from 2014 through 2023 to create a migration chronology by zone and overlaid this on top of the 2023 duck season dates. This allows us to both qualitatively and quantitatively assess the timing of the duck hunting seasons. Local staff will have figures relevant to your area, but for the sake of this presentation, I will show the results for the central zone. So the graph you're looking at, the solid blue line is that 10-year average. The light colored shaded area is the range of expected values. And in the background, the gray shaded area are the dates of the teal season, and the black shaded area are the regular duck hunting season dates. So from this, we can see that there's quite a bit of alignment between the duck season dates and the migration activity. And quantitatively, this represents 73% of the migration activity. If we compare that to the top 60 days of the duck migration, that represents 75%. So the 73% that our current season dates captures is very close and well within the annual variability of duck migration. The last piece of information we considered was from our 2024 Waterfowl Hunter Survey. Many of you may have received a survey. If you participated, thank you very much. We consider that information to inform a broad range of decisions. Again, on this topic, I'm going to be very brief and just display the results for the central zone and for the question where hunters selected the weeks that they consider most important for the duck hunting season. As you can see here in the central zone, hunters select November as the most important 4 weeks. Across the north zone and the south zone, there's a little bit of nuances, but at a statewide scale, hunters select late October through early December as the most important time of the duck hunting season. So, bringing this back to selecting waterfowl hunting season dates for 2026 through 2030, what we find is that these 3 sources of information indicate the current season dates and waterfowl hunting zones are well aligned with the current patterns of hunter activity, migration chronology, and hunter preference. Therefore, we're not proposing any changes to season dates or zone boundaries for the period 2026 through 2030. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you for your attention.
Jace Elliott here, state deer biologist for the Iowa DNR. I'll be providing an update of deer harvest, population trends, and disease status over the past year. I'll also be discussing our proposed changes for the upcoming 2025 deer season. Now, across the state, hunters reported just under 103,000 deer harvests over the past season. Now, this is down just 3% from both last year and the 5-year statewide average. Despite being slightly lower than last year, we continue to see a fairly stable statewide harvest trend over the past decade. However, looking at harvest and population trends at the statewide scale can often conceal differences among regional or county trends. For the rest of this presentation, we will be looking at county level numbers, which is the scale at which we manage deer populations here in Iowa. Now you're looking at a map that shows the percentage change of this year's buck harvest compared to the 5-year average. Buck harvest was chosen because it is not biased by changes in antlerless quotas, but instead provides a more accurate reflection of harvest opportunities across time. As you can see, most counties in the western half of the state show severe declines in harvest, which is reflective of both sustained population declines and severe EHD activity across this region. We have been working to reverse this trend through regulations that limit doe harvest over the past several years. Now, much of southern Iowa also experienced declines in harvest, though not as severe as western Iowa. It's safe to say that our past 2 EHD outbreaks affected deer abundance and harvest opportunities throughout many of these southern counties. Finally, we can see the opposite pattern across much of eastern Iowa, including some counties that experienced the highest harvest rates in nearly 2 decades. At the end of the presentation, I'll go over what regulatory changes are being proposed in light of these regional trends. Moving on now to our deer disease segment, we continue to see chronic wasting disease increase its geographic range, with 8 new counties detecting their first CWD positive deer since these meetings were held last year. These counties are shown on the slide. This map shows all the confirmed CWD detections since the disease was first found in Iowa's wild deer population in 2013. You can learn more about chronic wasting disease in Iowa by visiting our website or attending our annual CWD public virtual meeting held every fall. Switching gears now to hemorrhagic disease, which includes both EHD and blue tongue viruses. 2024 included the highest number of reported mortalities from hemorrhagic disease in Iowa's history. An average outbreak leads to roughly 200 reported mortalities statewide, and this year we received more than 3,000. 2024 was also our most widespread EHD outbreak, with disease activity reported in 95 of our 99 counties. The map shown here estimates the relative severity of hemorrhagic disease activity based on each county's deer population. It's important to note that this map includes data from both 2023 and 2024 outbreaks, which were 2 of the 3 most severe outbreaks in the state's history. This map suggests that central and western counties, as well as several counties in the southeastern region of the state, experienced the highest relative impacts over the last couple years. Now, in response to recurring disease activity, we've developed a couple online tools to help better understand and monitor hemorrhagic disease in Iowa. These tools can be found on our Iowa DNR app and deer hunting website. We encourage anyone that finds deer carcasses related to hemorrhagic disease to report this information using our new online public reporting tool. Doing so allows the Iowa Deer Program to better understand disease impacts and manage a balanced, healthy deer population into the future. This year, I also wanted to include this map, which reflects deer habitat suitability across the state. As you can see, there is far more suitable deer habitat across southern and much of eastern Iowa. In comparison, much of central, northern, and western Iowa is essentially void of suitable habitat except for river corridors. The reason I wanted to share this map is to demonstrate how vastly different the Iowa landscape is for deer, and that depends on where you are in the state. And for that reason, we also see very different deer densities estimated across the state, as shown on this slide. Rather than considering Iowa's deer population as one population, it's far more helpful to recognize that Iowa's deer are made up of multiple different regional populations that are trending independently of one another. These are all reasons why the Iowa Deer Program focuses on population management at the county level. Each year, The Iowa Deer Program reviews population and harvest data for every county in the state, which reflects our commitment to science-based decision-making. In Iowa, we're fortunate to have a number of independent data sets collected in every county every year, which includes our Spring Spotlight Survey, Antlered Buck Harvest, Bowhunter Observation Survey, as well as deer vehicle crash data. Now, reviewing all of these data sets together, as shown on this slide, tend to indicate deer population trends. Perhaps most importantly, our deer management process also incorporates the feedback of local DNR staff, hunters, and landowners in guiding management decisions at the county level. We very much value the input received from the public during these listening sessions as well as throughout the year, and that helps us strive for a balanced and healthy deer population throughout the state. And finally, here are the proposed changes to the upcoming 2025 deer hunting season. Counties shaded with a green color indicate a proposed increase in county antlerless tags, while counties shaded with a blue color indicate a proposed decrease. We're proposing to slightly increase county antlerless tags in several eastern counties due to expanding deer populations in this region. We're also proposing antlerless tag decreases in much of central and southern counties in response to recent population declines, largely resulting from the last 2 hemorrhagic disease outbreaks. To the deer hunters in attendance, please use this opportunity to provide feedback on the proposed changes you see before you. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to attend these important meetings. And your feedback that you provide is a critical component to our deer management process. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the email listed below. Thank you.